Course in the cement industry. Present you.
Let's observe the installation of a Cooper expansion-type split roller bearing. For the purpose of this demonstration, we will use an 01 BCP 300EX. First, we must dimensionally check the shaft to ensure that it is round and parallel. The shaft should be round and parallel within 1/1000th. As a general guide, the accepted tolerance for shaft diameter is +0 -0.002. For low speeds, this can go as high as +0 -0.005. The general service area should be free from burrs, scratches, and rust deposits. First things first, separate the triple labyrinth seals, but don't completely remove the joining pins. Smear the bore of each seal with grease between the two O-rings. Place the mating halves of each seal around the journal, making sure the stamped surfaces are on the same side. It will be necessary to compress the O-rings against the shaft so that the holes in the tongue and groove joints will line up. This can easily be accomplished using a hose clamp. Once the holes have been aligned, tap the joining pins back into place. The pin can also be squeezed into place using channel locks. After the seals have been assembled, move them out of the way to assemble the bearing onto the shaft. Prior to assembling the inner race onto the shaft, clean the shaft at the inner race seat. Then place the two halves in their correct axial location, observing match numbers or matching grooves. It may be required to tap the inner race onto the shaft. Use a plastic mallet or a block of wood interposed between the race and the hammer. Expansion races are normally set centrally with the outer race, but offset in the case of extreme axial expansion. Now that the inner race has been fitted onto the shaft, assemble the clamping rings into the inner race clamping ring seats, observing match numbers, with the joints offset at least 15 degrees from the inner race joints. The shoulders of the clamping ring must face inward. Note the gap at the inner race joints. The joint gap should be approximately equal, and this may be achieved by placing a feeler gauge in the gaps. There should also be gaps at the clamping ring joints. Now, ensure that the clamping rings are properly seated. This can be done by tapping down each half of the clamping ring around the shaft, using a plastic mallet or a block of wood as a hammer. Remove the feeler gauge. Repeat the tightening of the clamping ring screws. For proper installation, it must be emphasized that the clamping ring screws must be fully tightened. This ensures that the inner race is properly seated onto the shaft. Check that there are gaps at the inner race joints, and these gaps are approximately equal. The total gap may vary and is not critical, providing the shaft is within the required tolerance. Next, apply EP2 grease to the inner race and place the cage assembly around the inner race, inserting the U-clips, making sure the rollers are not binding. Coat the roller and cage assembly with a light coat of EP2 grease. Make sure there is plenty of grease in the roller pockets. After placing the pedestal base into position, smear the spherical seat with Molykote G paste or similar. If shim stock is to be utilized, make sure the entire base is totally supported. We can now slide the seals back into position and lubricate the labyrinth with EP2 grease. The next step is to take the bottom half of the cartridge, check the match numbers, lubricate the spherical seat with Molykote G paste, and the outer race with EP2 grease. Place it onto the roller cage assembly, ensuring that the tongs of the labyrinth and the cartridge engage freely with the grooves of the seal, and rotate it into place. Note that if a grooved outer race is used, care should be taken that the rollers are located in the grooved section of the outer race without binding or jamming. We now have the cartridge bottom positioned into the pedestal base. Check the position of the roller cage assembly in the outer race. Lubricate the inside surface of the top half of the cartridge with EP2 grease and place in position. When the two halves have been firmly mated together, progressively tighten the joint screws. Finish coating the spherical seat of the cartridge and pedestal with Molykote G paste. Now, fit the pedestal cap into position, observing necessary match numbers, and insert the screws and tighten. Before final tightening, the shaft should be turned or run for a short period of time. This will ensure that the bearing is properly aligned. Now, finish tightening the pedestal screws and inspect the final assembly. The pillow block assembly is ready for operation.
Thanks for following the channel, Courses in the Cement Industry. And please help us to continue and provide more information, by subscribe to the membership, and inviting your colleagues to watch this channel.